Hello, I'm Dr. Faye Hargrove. Welcome back to part 4 of our 2020 Letting Go video series. How do you feel? At this point, you've been with us through releasing your anger and releasing your sadness. And a lot of people at this point say that they feel lighter after releasing anger and sadness. Is it the same way for you? Good, good. So if you have not already watched the previous 3 videos, I suggest that you stop and go back and look at session 1, which is where I lay the groundwork and the foundation for the work that we're doing. In session 2, I continue to talk about your unconscious mind and your timeline, and we release sadness in session 2. Anger in session 2, and in session 3, we release the sadness. So here we are in part 4 or session 4, and we are going to release fear. So go ahead and stop. If you haven't done the first 3 sessions, I'll be right here waiting for you to catch up. Now, the focus of this session is fear and anxiety. Anxiety is future-based fear. We develop our fears based on our past experiences. Our anxiety is what we think might happen in the future and our worries about that. So anxiety is future-based fear. In this session, we will go through an intervention to release the fear from your memory storage system, just as we did with anger and with sadness. Now, just like your anger and sadness, you may have fear stored in some of your past memories. And just like we release the anger and the sadness, we're going to release the fear. Now, let's talk about fear. Fear is an interesting thing. If there's anything that can keep you from having an amazing life, it's that thief, fear. It steals your joy, it steals your ability to take advantages of opportunities, to trust people, to give your heart and be authentic in real relationships. Fear steals your desire to travel and see the world and have new adventures. Fear holds you back and keeps you from striving for better. Fear makes up the walls on the boxes that we decide to live in. It comes in different forms, and sometimes it's hard to recognize. There are more obvious fears like the fear of heights or the fear of darkness or the fear of snakes. But then there are our hidden fears. Our fear of success or the fear of failure. Our fear of being alone. The fear of being judged and criticized and rejected. Our fear of not being in control. Our fear of losing our lifestyle as we know it. Fear is the mother of all stored negative emotions, and sometimes it's irrational. And it can show up in some pretty interesting ways. The good news is we can let go of our fears. And if it's okay, we can do that right now. Some people have told me, however, that fear fuels them. There's a different perspective that they might take. Fear actually makes us stupid. We are literally dumbed down when we are feeling anxious or fearful because the blood drains from our prefrontal cortex where we have our executive function. We have our logical thinking and rational thinking, and it gets channeled to our large muscle groups to help prepare us for fight or flight. Our rational thinking is much more important for our daily functioning than our fight or flight response. Think of it. A hot stove will burn you, right? But do you need to be afraid of the stove in order to know not to touch it? Common sense will keep you safe in that scenario. So we can remain calm and think. When we do that, we are better at whatever it is that we're doing. So we're going to release the fear the way we released anger and sadness. Now, I'd like for you to think about the statement, I feel fearful about, or I worry about. Can you identify at least one thing that when you think about it at this moment, it still brings you a little bit of fear? Now remember, we did this for anger and for sadness in the last videos. So just jot down one thing that you feel fearful of. When we have released the fear from your timeline, I'm going to ask you to look back at what you wrote and notice how your feelings have changed. So this will be a good time to pause the video and to just grab something to write on. Just pause it. I'll be right here as soon as you're done writing down something that you know that you're fearful of or that you worry about. Welcome back. Let's get started letting go of the fear and resolve the root cause or the source of the issue that's creating your fears and your anxieties. Now, again, if you have not already viewed the first and the second and the third videos, please stop now and go back, because this process will make a lot more sense to you if you have the groundwork laid from sessions 1 and 2, and there really is a process and an order for releasing your anger, your sadness, your fear. Next, we'll do guilt, and after that, we will release your limiting decisions. That's your insecurities and your self-doubt. Great. Okay, so let's go to work. Let me remind you of something that I discussed briefly in the first 2 videos, and that is the concept or the distinction between your conscious and your unconscious mind. So in this process, I'd like for you to trust your unconscious mind and allow it to do all the work for you. Just as it's blinking for you right now and breathing for you right now, it's digesting that last meal you had, and it's beating your heart for you right now. So it's doing the work. Your job is to just sit back and relax and take on the role of observer. Just observe how your unconscious mind will respond to my suggestions, and we'll get this work done. So is it okay for you to let go of the fear? You can stop honoring that thief that's stealing your best life. Is it okay to let your unconscious mind let go of any stored fear that you might have today, and for you to know it consciously? Just give yourself permission. That's right. Can you imagine what the world would be like if none of us were afraid? Wow. Let's chip away a little bit at the problem and be part of the solution right now, okay? Now, in session 2, we discovered how your timeline was set up. Is it front to back? Is it left to right? Is it down to up? Where's your timeline? In session 2, we did a test drive on your timeline to help you know how to navigate through this guided imagery, and you release the anger from all of your stored memories. And in session 3, you actually release sadness from your timeline. And now we are turning our attention to our timeline again, but this time the target is your fear. Let me remind you of the process before we get started. So remember, I will ask you to consider where's the root cause memory. And that is the first time in your existence that you experienced the fear and you stored it in your timeline. I'll then ask you to just trust your unconscious mind to float you out over your timeline until you're high above that root cause memory. And remember, it's important to go back to the first memory, not the biggest memory, because in that first memory, you told yourself a story. You told yourself, this is how I handle fear. This is how the world works. And this is how I handle fear. And you set up the frame that you are using today. So if we can go back to the root cause memory, get the learning, and release the fear from that root cause event, then your unconscious mind will be free to rearrange all of your past memories, even some significant, maybe even traumatic events from your past. But you can release each of those events, the fear from each of those events, easily and effortlessly after we get the root cause memory or the first event. So after we release the fear from the root cause event, I will ask you to float a little further back on your timeline, turn and look down at that situation right before it occurred, and check your body. Do a live body scan and notice the fear's gone. Then we're going to float right down into your memory, and I'm going to ask you to get the learning, which is the new insight. And I'll also ask you if there's anyone that you want to forgive in that process. Remember, forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. It is to free you from that situation. And then with that being done, I'll ask you to float way back up high, face the direction of now. And as you float back toward now, you are just observing that brilliant unconscious mind of yours release all fear from every memory. So as an observer, you'll float on back to now. You'll come on down into the room and open your eyes without any fear. So remember, your eyes, it's best if you do this with your eyes closed, so don't do this while you're driving. So let's find that root cause memory for your fear. Were you to know the very first memory of fear, the very first place in your timeline that you stored fear along with your memory? Was it before your birth, during your birth, or after your birth? Allow the answer to just emerge from the back room, from your unconscious mind, and just answer that. Was it before your birth, during your birth, or after your birth? Remember, we are not looking for the biggest memory of fear. We want the root cause, that first memory. And if you said after your birth, at what age, what number did your unconscious mind present to you? Now, if you said before your birth, we're going to trust your unconscious mind to float you all the way back over your timeline until you're high above that first memory of fear, the root cause memory. And if you say it during your birth, then you'll just trust your unconscious mind and notice that you're floating out over your timeline until you're high above the time when you were born. Now, you're going to trust your unconscious mind the same way we did in the process with sadness and with anger. So let's just take you to the perfect place, the perfect appropriate place for you to let go of that stored fear. If it was during your birth, your unconscious mind will take you there. If it was before your birth, your unconscious mind will take you to wherever it started, as far back as you need to go. So just relax in your chair. Let's get back in touch with your timeline, and let's begin the process. So let's get back in touch with your timeline. Float way up high. Face the direction of your past. Trust your unconscious mind to float you out over your timeline until you're high above that first memory, the root cause memory of fear. So just float. Just go all the way out there now. Notice your unconscious mind taking you until you're high above that first memory of fear. Excellent. When you arrive above the root cause memory, you're imagining you're looking down at it way down there in your timeline. It's just a point on your timeline. And just notice, as you look down at that memory, your unconscious mind will get the learning, and you're going to release the fear. Notice your unconscious mind release the fear into the balloon. Imagine the balloon is above your head. That fear from that memory is released into the balloon, and notice the wind takes the balloon away from you. It helps to have your eyes closed as you're doing this, and just imagine the balloon floating away from you off into the distance, higher and further. And in a few seconds, the balloon will pop, and when it does, all of the fear from that root cause memory will be gone forever with the balloon as it floats higher and higher. Perfect. The balloon popped. And so I wonder now if you can float a little further back on your timeline and turn and look down at that situation right before it happened. So you're up high, you're looking down at your timeline, and you're a few minutes before the start of the sequence of events for that particular situation. Now, as you're looking down at it, check your body. Let's do a live body scan and notice, where's the fear? You let it go, didn't you? Excellent, excellent. So good. So let's float right down into your timeline, right down into the memory, and notice what's happening. Let's see it through your own eyes. Hear what you heard. Notice whatever there is to notice about that situation, and get the learning. The learning is the new insight that will allow you to have a different perspective about the event. As you're noticing what's happening in that situation, I wonder, is there anyone in that situation that you need to forgive? Can you go ahead and forgive them? Okay, go ahead and forgive them. Excellent. You have released the fear. You've gotten the new insight, and if forgiveness was appropriate, you've forgiven. So let's come back above your timeline. Face the direction of now. When you're ready, you can begin floating back toward now. Bring the learning with you. Whatever the new insight was, bring it with you. And just observe your unconscious mind rearranging all of your past memories, releasing all the fear from every aspect of your life. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. You're keeping your eyes closed. You're floating way up high. And you're just observing your unconscious mind, releasing the fear. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Stay up high. Release the fear all the way back to now. All the way back to now. All the way back to now. Just notice your unconscious mind rearranging all of your past memories, letting go of all the fear from all of your past memories. Take as much time as you need and come on back to now. Just noticing. Excellent. When you arrive above now, after you have released all of the fear from every memory, you can float down into the room and open your eyes without any fear. Take as much time as you need. And come on back to now. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Letting go of all the fear from all of your past memories as you stay up high and float back to now. Take as much time as you need. When you get back to now, you can float down into the room and open your eyes without the fear. Welcome back. How was that? You did a great job. You know, you've had the opportunity to take the third trip in the balloon process. In the first trip, you released your anger. In the second trip, you released your sadness. And now the fear's gone. So we're going to do this 2 more times. The next trip we take on your timeline will be to release the guilt. And then we will, on the last trip, we will release your limiting decisions, that's your insecurities and your self-doubt, and restore your confidence. So I'd like you to look back at what you wrote for the statement, I feel fear about, or I feel fearful about. Remember, before we went on the timeline, you paused for a few minutes and you identified something that you used to feel fearful about. So pause the video for a minute and go back and take a look at that. And just think about it for a few minutes. And I'd like for you to notice how your feelings have changed. I mean, you might not be neutral about it, or you may be neutral about it. You might be feeling something else at this point, but pause the video and consider for a moment your new feelings about the situation where you used to feel fearful. Okay. Now, during this last trip on your timeline, you released the fear and you got the learning from the root cause event. What was that learning? What was the new insight? Whatever the issue was that needed to be resolved in that event now has resolution, and you have a completely different perspective about that situation now. I wonder if you could take a few minutes to just jot down the learnings. So you can stop the video, hit the pause button. What do you now know about that situation? I'll be here waiting for you when you're done.